Welcome back to another edition of Through the Smoke, a Miami Hurricanes football and recruiting podcast here on the 24/7 Sports Network. David Lake, joined as always by Gabby Urrutia. We're here I'm going to rant a little bit on the AD candidates here at the start of the podcast, and then we're going to talk some recruiting. Miami's hot right now on the recruiting trail, and we're going to dive into what their class looks like, some of their recent commits, who might be next, etc. But before we dive into the podcast, I want to highlight our sponsors. And of course, we will start with Canes Connection. That's Miami's collective. They play a critical role in Miami's talent acquisition process. And they're a big reason why the Hurricanes are a top 10 class now, by far the best class in the ACC, and trending to be a top 5 class, in my opinion, at the end of this cycle. So those guys kill it over there. Go support them in any way you can. It's the best grassroots way to support the program. Go over to canesconnection.com and go be a member over there at whatever level best suits you. Also, our guy Nick Musarino. If you've been injured in any type of accident, boating accident, slip and fall accident, trucking accident, Uber Lyft accident, car accident, Nick Musarino is the personal injury attorney you should contact at 561-960-9870 or visit his website at flinjury.law. And then if you're in the market for a new house, buying, selling, investing, Gabby, tell us about our guy Aaron Pascal.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. If you've been waiting for that right time to buy or sell here or invest in South Florida, this might be the right window. And Aaron Pascal, born and raised right here in South Florida, a lifelong Miami Hurricanes fan. Market changes and lower mortgage rates, new opportunities are opening up every single day. So whether you're buying, selling, or just exploring options, Aaron Pascal is there to help. He can always talk a little bit Miami Hurricanes football with you as well. So reach out today, no obligation home market value analysis. And you can contact Aaron Pascal at 305-497-5773 or at abpascal.kw.com.
All right, as I said, I want to rant a little bit here at the top of the show about Miami's athletic director candidates. We've discussed previously here on the podcast how, Dan Radakovich stepping down did a nice job of shepherding the program here through this transition period, the early Mario Cristobal years, this wild NIL era, this wild transfer portal era. Some major shifts happening right now in college athletics in general. And Dan Radakovich, to me, did a nice job of stabilizing things, providing Miami with some pathways of success to navigate this difficult era. And so, in my opinion, he should be commended for the job he did. But now Miami's turning the page. They're going to go hire a new athletic director. And really, at this stage, it looks like a two-man race between two guys we've discussed here on the podcast before, Michael Yormark and Jim Frivola. And frankly, the reason why I want to rant, I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around why Michael Yormark is still being taken seriously as a candidate. Because to me, there's a guy, well, let's get into it, right? I'm sure Michael Yormark does, he projects himself as a guy that works really hard. And I'm sure he does work long hours and put the time in. But really, if you go beneath the surface, there's very little substance to what he does. His best trick is kind of parading around DJ Khaled and using that level of celebrity to bamboozle folks into thinking he's some sort of sharp business mind and deal maker. The Yormark playbook, both Michael and Brett, frankly, Brett is his twin brother, who is the commissioner of the Big 12. The Yormark playbook during their careers, and they both worked in sports in various places. Michael has been with the Panthers when they were arguably the worst franchise in all of sports. He's now with Rock Nation Sports, kind of on the agent side of things. But anyways, the Yormark playbook is to land corporate sponsorship deals and brag about how big they are, and let people know the reason why these corporate sponsorships were landed was because of me. To me, that's just not what being the AD is about at a university. Being an AD at a university is about one thing, putting the brand of the university, of the school, of the program, of the football team, in Miami's case, the U, putting the brand above everything else. And look, I think we saw a glimpse of this behavior again when the reporting of Dan Radakovich stepping down or retiring, however you want to phrase it, when that started being reported on, Michael Yormark's name surfaced within 20 minutes of that report. And, I think even one highly respected and trustworthy reporter, reported that Yormark was off when it comes to conducting things outside of themselves. It always has to be about them. And that's just, they couldn't just let the process play out and let Michael Yormark go through the process of having to interview and, go be hired as an AD in a real way. They had to let it be known he's going to be the guy. He's the favorite. This is a done deal. And to me, this is just, this isn't the biggest deal because he's not hired yet. He's not the acting AD, but this is an example of behavior that just isn't going to fly at the University of Miami when you have Joe Echeverria as the president and you have Mario Cristobal as the head coach. No AD at any school is above the brand. And that's something that Joe E recognizes as the president. That's something that Mario Cristobal recognizes as the head coach. If you land a corporate sponsorship at Miami, it's because of the U. It's because of 5 national championships. It's because of the orange and green. It's because Miami is the coolest brand in college sports. It's not, it's because Mario Cristobal is delivering a tremendous product with the football team. It's not because of, an AD closing a deal. Um, but if Michael Yormark is hired as the AD, he's going to be the first to let everyone know that everything is happening because of him. To me, Gabby, like I try to think about man, what is the upside of even hiring Michael Yormark as the AD? Why would they want to hire him? And honestly, the thing that what are the pros and cons of hiring Michael Yormark in my own head? And the only pro I can really come up with that's tangible is this idea that maybe Miami might be interested in conference realignment of going to the Big 12 or having some sort of relationship with the Big 12 commissioner in Brett. And look, I don't think there's any truth to that. I don't think there's any reality to that. I think Miami ideally would prefer to go to one of the Big Two power conferences, Big Ten or SEC, and preferably the Big Ten if they had their choice, because that's the best fit for the university. Um, but look, I think it's fair to point out, to me, it's fairly obvious that if you hire Michael Yormark as your AD, you're going to end up in the Big 12. And to me, that's a step down from the ACC. And frankly, I'm shocked things have even gotten this far with Yormark with that in mind. As long as Brett Yormark is the Big 12 commissioner, if you hire Michael Yormark as your AD, you're going to end up in the Big 12, one way or another. So that's, and again, to me, that's the only reason you go hire a guy like Michael Yormark, to try and make sure you have that type of play. But where I'm at right now, I don't think Miami needs to make that type of play with conference realignment right around the corner. Michael Yormark is selling himself in a way, to leadership, uh, to the University of Miami, that him and his brother can change the landscape of college athletics from the inside by rewriting college football, the way it's structured, and conferences, the way conferences are structured. To me, Gabby, this is just like snake oil salesman type stuff. This is not real. Miami hiring Michael Yormark certainly helps Brett to me at the Big 12 because Brett would love to be able to tell the Big 12, hey, my brother just got hired at Miami. We're going to now go bring Miami over. Again, I don't see how it helps Miami though. And again, if you are hiring Michael Yormark, you're going to the Big 12, which is a dumb move. Miami needs to end up in the Big 10. Michael Yormark, on his side of things, is going to make sure that doesn't happen as long as Brett Yormark is the commissioner at the Big 12. So this is just a plea once again. Please, please, Miami, be serious. Miami is a serious football program right now, and that requires serious leadership from the athletic department, from the university. The leadership to this point has done an elite job, right? In terms of like the changing the trajectory of the athletic department, the football program, aligning things, with the athletic department, the football coach, athletic director, and school president. And look, man, this goes back to 5 years ago now when firing Blake James so you could go hire Mario Cristobal was an aggressive and audacious move, but it was 100% the right move. And let's remember why you had to do that. You had to do that because Blake James was never going to be able to hire or work with Mario Cristobal. And on the flip side of that, Mario Cristobal was never going to work for or want to work for Blake James. That relationship matters. And frankly, it would be unwise to not let the successful head football coach, fast forward 5 years now, Mario Cristobal is successful, has Miami on an elite trajectory. It would be unwise to not let Mario Cristobal have a say in who the AD hire should be. So let's just keep that in mind. Mario Cristobal really, really, really cared about who the AD is and was before he experienced success as the University of Miami head coach. I would say the hiring of Dan Radakovich was a good move too. Going back to the point of, to this point, the UM leadership, whether that's the board of trustees, the president, the vice president, etc., going and getting Dan Radakovich was a good move. It signaled the school was serious about athletics. Now Dan Radakovich wasn't perfect, and I think there's certainly things you could point to that are disappointing about his tenure. I know it ruffled some feathers that his wife never moved down to South Florida. And, I think that can certainly signal that maybe they're not all in on the University of Miami. And I think moving forward, right, the next AD needs to be all in on the University of Miami. So that's something I think that does need to, be a characteristic of the next AD. But look, Radakovich, again, as I said earlier, he steadied things during a turbulent time at UM, and he has set up Miami for success now in the future during this next phase. Hiring Jay Lucas was a great hire by the leadership as well. And, look, I think there's no doubt that hiring the head football coach, hiring the basketball coach, this leadership group has hit some grand slams. I think hiring administrators is a different thing, though. And I know I've said this before, but this is a two-man race. Michael Yormark and Jim Furvola. I don't think it's much of a debate as to which is the better fit. Jim Furvola is more qualified than Michael Yormark. Jim Furvola actually cares deeply about Miami, just like Joe Echeverria and just like Mario Cristobal. This is Jim Furvola's dream job, just like Joe Echeverria and just like Mario Cristobal. I don't think people grasp, Gabby, like how successful a run Jim Furvola is on. He is overqualified to be the AD at Miami. When he was with the UFC, he changed their revenue by working with companies. He transitioned them from being a organization that had to work with companies that advertised gas station male enhancement pills to Budweiser and Dodge. He went from, working in the Golden Knights organization in hockey during their Stanley Cup run to the Tampa Bay Lightning for one of their Stanley Cup runs. And now he's at AFC Bournemouth, and he's at the doorstep of them making Champions League football. Jim Favola doesn't need to self promote. The success speaks for itself. Miami should be running to hire him as their next athletic director. Let's talk about the trajectory of Michael Yormark. And another thing I can't wrap my head around, why does he want this job? I think you could say the same about Jim Favola, because again, he is overqualified for this job. But why does Jim Favola want this job? Because it's his dream job to work for his alma mater at the University of Miami. Michael Yormark, I can't wrap my head around why he wants this job. He showed with the Panthers, he's not particularly good or effective in this role. He's now with Rock Nation Sports, and they're fine in their field, but nothing that moves the needle in that space. And now he wants to come do college athletics with conference realignment a few years away, and his twin brother as the Big 12 commissioner. To me, Gabby, this is like wolf in sheep's clothing type of stuff. The only reason why I think he wants to come back is to help his brother with the Big 12 and realignment. And, also he can pump himself up as a guy that got Miami out of the ACC when in reality, that's a step down. The buzzword that always gets thrown around in college athletics is alignment. And it does matter. The president, the AD, the head football coach all have to be on the same page. Yormark is a self-promoter that does not align with the way that Joe Echeverria and Mario Cristobal operate. Again, Joe E., Mario Cristobal, Jim Favola, they're all cut from the same cloth. They are all overqualified to be working at the University of Miami. Remember, Gabby, like when Miami was chasing Mario Cristobal, there was a lot of talk out there like, why would Mario leave Oregon? Which at that time was much longer track record of recent success and much more successful, much more resources poured into it. Why would Mario Cristobal leave that to come to Miami? Because Mario Cristobal loves the U, bleeds orange and green, and he wanted to help bring Miami back to fulfilling its potential as one of the top football programs in the sport. The same can be said about Jim Favola. Why does he want to come back to this job when he is, doing huge things with AFC Bournemouth? It's because of similar reasons. He loves the University of Miami. This is his dream job. He wants to come back and he wants to pour into this university that gave him so much as a student. So to me, I think it's a simple hire in terms of like which guy to pick. To me, Michael Yormark is just a snake oil salesman who only cares about one thing: the promotion and advancement of Michael Yormark and maybe also his brother Brett. Miami doesn't need a snake oil salesman. Miami doesn't need the Big 12. Miami has substance right now. Hire an AD that will do right by the school, by the program, by the logo. Make the right hire. Don't make the flashy hire that will win Twitter for 24 hours and inevitably be a bad fit. I think Miami went down this road with Yormark, 6, 9 months ago, without realizing what his leadership actually looks like, what his substance is, and what the results of his leadership are actually like. And now that they're starting to learn, I think, I'm hoping they're going to pivot to make the right hire. This really is a no-brainer. Go hire Jim Favola. That's all I got to say.
Yeah. What can you share about just where this process is at? Like, is there any clarity as to like a timeline? I guess there's no real rush because Dan Radakovich doesn't formally retire until June, right? Like, where are we at with this process?
I think I think it's being delayed a little bit because I think they're looking more into both Yormark and Favola, which I think is a good thing for Favola. And look, I think maybe by end of summer, August, September, I think maybe we should know where Miami stands as in terms of like who the next AD will be. But like,
Yeah.
is there a dead set time? At this point, I don't know of one.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's pretty clear just at this point of just where it's at. And look, it is tossed around so much, but that alignment is so important. And there's so much change coming to college football that you need to make sure everyone in your organization is on the same page as far as just having a vision of, hey, where do we envision this program going, being in 5 years when all this dust settles? Like, do we want to be a Big Ten program? I think it's important that Mario Cristobal, the school president, and whoever the next athletic director have a clear plan and a clear vision where everyone's pulling in the same direction. And I can't imagine the Big 12 being an option. Like I can't imagine Coach Cristobal signing off on, hey, yeah, you know what? We're going to the Big 12. And even really just the perception of that, and I said this the last time we discussed it, even the perception of that being possible is going to be used against Miami football in one of the most important aspects of
Right.
all of this, right? Which is talent acquisition. They already have to deal with the ACC stuff and having to navigate recruiting as an ACC program. And, again, quote, not playing a tough schedule week in and week out like the SEC. We just saw that kind of be the excuse of why Miami lost a 5-star offensive lineman in Broward County, right? That was one of the key, reasons
Yeah.
why, quote unquote. I'm using air quotes for those only listening on audio. So even the perception that the Big 12 is a possibility is going to be used against Miami when really it seems like we're going to these two super league conferences between the Big Ten and SEC inevitably. You don't want to be tied to the Big 12. Why would you want to be tied to the Big 12? There's nothing attractive about, Miami becoming the next Big 12 school. Like to me that's counterproductive to where the sport is going. So if there is someone in this place, and if these are the options, David, which you did an excellent job of just laying it out there, kind of keeping it black and white as far as just what are the positives, what are the negatives of each of these candidates, and cementing where you stand on it. I don't think that there is any reason to even just kind of play with the fire of being tied to the Big 12. And I don't understand. I don't know the ins and outs of this athletic director search or what it takes in the way that you do. But just from hearing what you've shared about it, to me, it's obvious that Jim Favola is someone that would bring more alignment and bring more of a vision and a partnership rather than being
Yes.
someone who is just looking to or coming in with an agenda of, wanting to help in his big brother. Even if it's just even what you said stood out to me was just like kind of coming with the vision of, oh, me and my brother can help, change college football from within. It's like I'm not sure I want that. I
No,
don't know if
that's
I
again,
don't want Brett Yormark being someone that shapes college football. I don't want that at all. That's not the person
right.
I want leading the charge. So I don't like the sound of that either. Jim Frivola seems like, again, everything that he's done. It just hearing even prior to you sharing, like it feels like, hey, you're at like a major European soccer club. I'm not super familiar with the European soccer system, but it sounds
Well,
like you're in a pretty good situation over
yeah.
there. Like, why Miami? Like, it's true. Like, why would you want to come be the athletic director at the University of Miami? And I think the fact that it sounds very much like the Mario Cristobal conversation of why would you leave Oregon with backed by Phil Knight
Correct.
and Nike? Like, that doesn't make any sense. It doesn't calculate to just the typical person hearing it that is from, Lawrence, Kansas or whatever it is. Like
It's
it
because
just doesn't
Miami is
register.
special, man. Like
Right. And the
for
people that care
people,
about it want to be
yes.
a part of it. And I think there's something to someone that genuinely wants to be a part of something because they care about it. And we've seen how that I feel like that just gears people in a different way than doing something because they're good at it or they're in the right spot or it's just about that next thing. But being a part of like a passion project aside from doing something you're good at, I think just helps people elevate to a different way, which we've seen with Mario Cristobal. Mario Cristobal is a really good coach at Oregon, and I feel like he's taken it to a different level at Miami
Hmm.
because he is so rooted in getting Miami back to where they need to be. And you can tell he's not looking for the next thing. He's not waiting for Alabama to open, or he could have done that by staying at Oregon. Oregon is a destination job. Like he left the destination job to come be a part of this. So I think finding more people of that mind frame is important to where Miami's going in this future that is kind of uncertain. And Miami needs to make sure that they're on the right side of whatever's coming down the pipe in 5, 10 years, whatever the case is. It matters who this hire is, and it matters that there's alignment and vision and just everyone pulling in that same direction.
I last thing I'll say, I just can't imagine a worse personality fit with Mario Cristobal than Michael Yormark. They do share a trait of two guys that work very hard. Like I'm not going to speak otherwise on Michael Yormark in regards to that, but in terms of just like needing credit and that type of behavior, that just doesn't work, man, in college football and in athletics. The face of your program is your head coach,
Right.
and your athletic director needs to know that and embrace that. And that's going to be a problem. That's going to be an issue for a guy like Michael Yormark. So, um, again, to me, it's a clear and obvious choice to make between these two candidates. I trust that Miami is going to make the right hire in this regard. They've done that here since hiring Dan Radakovich and Mario Cristobal. I trust that they're going to do it again here with this AD hire. All right, let's transition to recruiting talk. And Gabby, we've got some commitments to kind of touch on. Since our last podcast, we took a little break here in May. Recruiting never stops, though. And so Miami's picked up five-star corner Dante Wright out of California, flipped him from Georgia. Miami flipped AI King. Is that how you say his
A King,
name?
I think it's A
A
King.
King. A
A King
King
Hall.
Hall. He's from the state of Alabama. He flips from Oregon. They also landed defensive tackle Ezekiel Eyangbail from Texas, and they recently landed Javon Dawson from Palm Beach County. I think that's it. I might be missing one guy that they've also landed here in the last
Uh,
few weeks.
did we
But
touch? Did we get Ty Keys in there from since our last
let's
podcast? I
talk
think we did.
Tykees too. Well,
Yeah.
if we haven't, Tykees as well, productive running back from the state of Mississippi. So wherever you want to go with these guys, I'd like to also talk about Miami's class in general. So we don't have to go into all of this, but like Miami's on a nice little run here.
Yeah.
And I think maybe one topic worth touching on is it just seems like in general now, for whatever reason, that there seems to be a trend of guys jumping on board across the country in May. So before the summer official visit season really ramps up. Is there why do you think that trend's happening? What are your thoughts on Miami flipping these guys, getting them in the boat here early before summer OVs?
Yeah, I think starting with this May situation, right? Because I think this is new to the college football landscape this year specifically. These official visits in beginning in May that last 4 weekends, running through mid late June, have kind of been like the pinnacle, right? Like kind of like the of a typical recruiting cycle these days, right? It kind of was later in the cycle. It's constantly moving up
Yeah.
and up and up. And now it feels like May is at a point where it's just like people aren't even taking official visits anymore, or it's not as important or as defining as it was or as it has been in previous cycles. And just me poking around and trying to get a feel for why exactly this is happening, I think a couple of just common themes have been presented. I think one is the obvious, and that's NIL, right? I think people are identifying who they want sooner in the process. This spring evaluation period is long. So coaches have been on the road for weeks at this point, being able to kind of see guys in person, do in-home visits during the spring months. They're not that usually used to be like a end of the process type of thing, kind of sit in the living room, have dinner with the family, get mama's home cooked meal and try to close the deal right before signing day. Like that's pushed up very early. I think they're doing January in-home visits. So I think the evaluation process in general has kind of been condensed into a point where there's just so much access now. And I think programs have been able to identify and kind of just close on who they feel like they need to get. And I think the more that that's happened, the more the dominoes have continued to fall. Because if three defensive tackles commit, that forces the rest of the defensive tackles to
Yeah.
have to kind of make decisions. So I think it's kind of cascaded in
In
that way
some
where it's just,
ways, does it prevent bidding wars in some ways, or is that going to happen no matter
yeah,
what?
I think they're still happening. I think it's, everyone has
Because like
money
summer
to an
OV
extent, right?
time,
Right.
there's,
Kind of.
I'm going one place one week, then the next week,
Yep.
and then the next week, and with each
hmm
visit, the number goes up
The number
inevitably.
goes up. Yeah, and I think look, some of that stuff might be happening in living rooms, right, during the
Yeah.
spring evaluation period where coaches are coming over and doing all that stuff. And I think another like the other side of this coin, David, that kind of keeps coming up is that these kids are just taking so many visits during the recruiting process now,
Yeah.
where it's just like they might have seen the schools that they're planning to officially visit. They might have seen each one of those schools two or three times to this point. And these unofficial visits are almost tailored like official visits, especially if you're coming to watch a practice. Like you're kind of getting more value from coming and watching a spring practice and then sitting down in meeting rooms all day and all of that type of stuff. Like you're getting an official visit almost type of treatment. Like you could go eat with coaching staffs within a certain radius from campus. Like you can sit down and share a meal. You can spend a lot of intimate time with, with the coaches and all that stuff. So after so many different exposures, and I think it's easier to present the, hey, do you really need to take official visits? Like you've kind of seen everything we have to offer. You've seen everything they have to offer. Here's your NIL package. This is what we got for you. Let's just close this thing out and
Yeah.
let's end this process. So I think it's been just like the concoction of this era has kind of resulted in this process really across the board for the most part, right? Not everybody, but
Yeah.
for the most part, just being expedited to this point where usually the run that we would get at the end of June after these official visits,
Right.
we're just getting
Seems
it
like it's
now.
happening now.
We're getting it on the front end,
Because
and I
May
think
used to be dead.
super dead. Like this
Yeah.
used to be like go on vacation in May because June
Yeah.
official visits are about to come, and I feel like I've been as busy as ever during May, which is typically a downtime. And I think it's going to be interesting. I mean, official visits are still going to be important, and there's
Yeah.
going to be guys that Miami wants to flip that are coming on official visits. There is still a select group of guys that are not committed that are going to be coming on official visits and going through the process and all that stuff. But that number has really, really dwindled down to a select few prospects rather than or guys that are committed super early in the process that are
Let
just
me ask you,
continuing to kind of go through this. Yep.
the two corners that were flipped here. How surprised were you when,
Yeah.
word was getting out that these guys are flipping to Miami? Did you see it coming and what went into the flip?
Yeah, I think A. King Hall was probably a little bit more under the radar. That name emerged, I think it was like maybe 4 or 5 days prior to the flip that this was the guy that they were working on. And look, I think that this was someone that they had identified as someone they liked earlier in the process, and he's someone that they had communicated to me like we like this kid, but it was like this corner from Alabama committed to Oregon. I didn't. I don't know. I didn't see the path to that happening just how that typically would go. Dante Wright, I think, was more on my radar, but I was just skeptical. Just him being a 5-star from California. There was a lot of Oregon buzz. Miami didn't have a cornerbacks coach in place, so Terry Jefferson was kind of recruiting him, but hadn't been formally named the coach. And look, just talking to some people close to Dante Wright, I think it was obvious that he liked Miami. There was just that elephant in the room of just Miami doesn't have a cornerbacks coach right now. And then I think once they made Terry Jefferson the cornerbacks coach and there was some clarity, I know he had done a really good job of developing a relationship with Dante Wright. And then obviously Miami just being aggressive in wanting to land an elite corner this cycle. I think it was just kind of like the perfect concoction of just they just were able to get this done and really beat out Oregon. He was committed to Georgia, but I don't think anyone really believed at that point that he was going to Georgia. So I think it really came down to Oregon, Miami, and really UCLA. Like UCLA put up a very aggressive offer on the table too. But I think Miami just being able to get that done and Terry Jefferson doing some really, really good work on the trail and then getting him down for practice too. Just watching him, allowing him to watch Miami compete, I think kind of set the tone. And then, they kind of continued to strike all the right chords and were able to kind of cross the finish line with that one. But both of those guys ultimately were top of the board cornerbacks for them. And look, I think whether it was at the high school level or in the transfer portal, addressing cornerback was a priority for the program.
I love it.
Just going into this, you know, understand well, obviously the winter transfer portal window, because all of these cornerbacks that you have that you feel really good about are all draft eligible. So you
Hmm.
don't know exactly how this is going to go. These guys can all play their way into the NFL draft. So you need to really restock that room. I think doing so at the high school level is the way to go. Dante Wright is a potential plug and play guy. They love A. King
I think
Hall.
he
He's a
is.
he's a thick build type of corner to develop, in Coral Gables. So I think both these guys represent really big recruiting wins. Both top 100 composite cornerbacks. Dante Wright, of course, is already a five-star, consensus five-star, top 10 player in the country. So these are massive wins, David. I know you did a really good story on just this is by far the highest ranked cornerback Miami signed, right?
Dante, yeah.
Yeah, Dante Wright is, and so this is a
Since
huge moment.
2000, like
Yeah,
said, the data going back to then. And look, recruiting rankings or whatever, but like Miami really doesn't land corners that are rated this high ever. Like the highest was Tracy Howard back in what, the 2012 class, if I
hmm
remember right. And by the composite, I think he was like 24 or so. And Dante Wright's in a totally different stratosphere right now. There's still going to be ranking updates, through this cycle. But being a top 10 player at corner, typically, Gabby, like those guys hit. And typically, those
yeah,
guys are 3-year starters and NFL first or second round picks. So, um, and look, everyone knows by now, in my opinion, you stack the talent or you have good talent at quarterback, O line, D line, corner, you're gonna win a ton of games. And
hmm
I think early on in the Mario Cristobal era, there was a lot of focus on line of scrimmage, line of scrimmage, line of scrimmage, and that's building out nicely. And now we're seeing some resources devoted to corner. And man, the future of the secondary in general,
yeah,
it's stacked with talent here for
it is.
years to come. So I'm excited about Dante Wright and Hall. Tell us about Ezekiel and Javon Dawson as line of scrimmage, defensive line of scrimmage additions, what Miami likes about them.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to hit the Ezekiel pronunciation right. He spelled it out for us on his
All
Twitter
right,
account
teach
shortly
me.
after. It's Ayangbile.
Young
So
Bile. Okay.
Ezekiel Ayangbile. Um, if I'm pronouncing, if I hope I'm reading that right, but that's what it reads like. So Ezekiel Ayangbile. He's a bit. So look, this is a Houston defensive lineman that Miami really liked. They got him on campus during the spring. He was here for multiple days on campus, and look, he's not the he kind of checks off the box of like that interior defensive lineman that you want. 6'2", 265 pounds, a high motor kid with some
Hmm.
thickness that they feel like can be a disruptor along the interior. So I know Miami's super super jazzed up about this addition. They really wanted to acquire this kid, and I think it was a priority for them. LSU was a top contender in that recruitment, emerged as one. He's a Virginia Tech legacy, and then I think his athletic profile, like genetically, is worth highlighting. He's the son of what I think 16-year NFL vet Dwayne Brown, who was an offensive tackle
Hmm.
for the Texans and the Seahawks, was a Hall of Famer at
Stud.
Virginia Tech, and his mom, I believe, was a big time track athlete at Virginia Tech as well. So the genetic pool, along with just everything that you kind of see from him physically and then just on tape, I think you just bet on what that's going to look like, especially when you start tapping into a college strength and conditioning department. The way that Miami develops and plays along the defensive line, it feels like a really good fit. And he's someone I'm really excited about. Like I think his best football is still ahead of him.
Hmm.
So I think I think that was a really good addition to the class. Javon Dawson, edge out of St. Lucius in Palm Beach County. This kid's just 16 years old, and Miami really likes this kid's upside. He's tested, through the roof. I think what it was like a 4.66 40,
Where
10.7
was
broad
those?
jump.
Where was?
I think it was at the opening
Okay,
from what I understand.
it's
10.7
legit
broad, I
numbers.
think. Yeah, it's like this is verified testing numbers, and I think like a
Yeah,
38.5 vertical. He's raw, right? Like there's
yeah.
still a ways to go, but he's young for his class. I think what I think Miami just really likes like the actual kid. Like they feel
Traits.
like he's a really good kid. Yeah, the traits, of course, the athletic upside is just through the roof. And I think in this NIL era, you have to find kids that want to be here, right? And
Hmm.
I think one thing that just kind of keeps coming back to me about Javon Dawson is that he just really was excited and passionate about wanting to be at Miami. He had Georgia that was in the mix. Like Georgia
Hmm.
was legitimately recruiting him. North Carolina, as we know, was making him a priority, and that can come with a lot of resource allocation with what the Tar Heels are doing over there under Bill Belichick. There were a bunch of other programs that were kicking his tires too. LSU, I believe, was in the mix. Florida State, a bunch of others, and he just wanted to be at Miami. And so this is a young defensive end prospect that they want to stash and develop and see what kind of comes out on the other end. He'll be at Miami 6 months plus before he even turns 18 years old. So
Hmm.
there's a lot of youth, a lot of upside, and Miami's going to stay patient with developing him and his ability to rush the quarterback. But he also has, what you showed at the opening. If you read the scouting reports and stuff like that, he showed his ability to cover in space too. So he's an intriguing athlete that Miami has to work with.
Very long. To me, it comes down to kind of like, can he get to like 245 pounds, which is going to
Mhm.
take some patience. But yes, the raw clay is very intriguing, and I agree. As you talk about like resource allocation, he's a guy that you bet on, and he's not going to cost as much as a five-star guy. So
Mhm.
um, I like the addition as well. How about Ty Keys? Let's
Yeah.
talk about him. Productive running back. Um, you know, Myson Johnson Cook decided to go elsewhere, and Miami pivoted immediately to Ty Keys.
Yeah, 6'1", 190 pounder. Also a pretty good baseball prospect over in the SIP too. His team was playing for a state championship this week. I'm not sure if they won on Wednesday or not, but I know he was in the finals. He hit a triple. I think he was his region player of the year, as a
Wow.
baseball player. So just and when we were talking to him on campus, he said he was like low 90s off the mound. So I mean, just an impressive athlete, right? Like this kid is just a gifted athlete, and Miami loves just like just like the personality traits. They were like he didn't care if we were taking two or three running backs. Just kind of an alpha, someone who commands a room. And they get there was a good story about him like just being on a Zoom call with a bunch of the staff when he committed, and there was they said he just kind of owned the chat, like, all these people, and he was just like the star of the show and is comfortable with the eyes on him. And so I think Miami feels like he's a really good culture fit for what they want. You need to have that chip on your shoulder if you're going to play at Miami. You can't be afraid of competition or what's coming along with you. So he's an impressive guy who's highly productive on Friday nights. I mean, the numbers are absurd. I think it's like over 3,000 yards he
Yeah.
had on the season. I think he had like a 500 yard or something crazy yard game. In one of the playoff games. During his junior campaign. So Miami loves this kid and feels like he's a great fit. And I think I think that's just something they're emphasizing this cycle. Like they want to take just good culture guys that are going to come in and do things the right way, and just be responsible and be someone that they can people just be dependable when they get to campus and not having to kind of babysit some of these guys. So I think Ty Keys and a lot of these other guys check off those boxes.
He reminds me just like playing style wise and also character traits and personality. He kind of reminds, I get a little bit of DJ Dallas vibes with him, just
Mm.
his running style. Kind of a thicker guy, kind of a guy that needs to get downhill a little bit, but he finds the space and gets downhill, and he's hard to tackle when that happens. And I think that's a compliment. I think DJ Dallas was a solid back
Yeah.
for Miami.
Played in the league. He's sat in the
Yeah,
league for a bit. Like he
right,
had some shelf life there.
right. One guy gonna decide. We're recording this Thursday afternoon. He's set to decide tonight. AJ Randall, linebacker out of the Carolinas. What are the vibes here?
Yeah, I think Miami's in a really good spot going into that announcement. AJ Randall is a big time athlete. I mean, he's someone that I think Corey Heatherman specifically is pretty enamored with as a prospect. 6'3", 310 pounds plus. He's someone that they've watched practice this spring. They've gone in home with, and they're just really just so high on the physical upside. He's a 300-meter hurdle state champ in the Tar Heel state. So has that athleticism and explosiveness that you need to be a state champ in that specific event. He plays basketball. He goes both ways for his high school. I was hearing a story about Miami when they went to go watch him practice. He was playing nickel and covering guys downfield, running with receivers. And they feel like he is just such an explosive, high upside, freaky traits type of athlete. He was described as like a creature to me. That's a term that they like to use in Coral Gables. And he fits the bill of what a creature is defined as by those in the building. So I think Miami's in an excellent position to get him. Notre Dame made a last second push. I think they went in home last night. South Carolina was believed to be like the true competitor to Miami in this one. Ohio State, Georgia, Florida, a ton of others were in the mix here. But I think Miami's in a really good position to get this one done.
All right, and a big too, because in my opinion, like linebacker's one of those position groups that needs to level up a little bit in recruiting this cycle. So getting a guy like that for the future, I think, you start projecting the future defense. It's looking nice at all three levels of the defense if you're able to get a guy like an AJ Randall. All right, Gabby, we've talked plenty about the stars of the class, the highly rated guys. So um, I'd like to also share our thoughts about maybe the guys that aren't getting much pub, kind of the lower rated guys, just our thoughts on them, and then just thoughts on the class in general, and where we feel like things need to go here during the summer months as Miami looks to close out the class. So, I went back and watched just to refresh myself with the class, went back and watched all their highlights and just some takes on them at their best, what they look like at their best. And so I'll start with Sean Tatum,
Yeah,
the offensive lineman. He's still like a top 200 player according to the
right.
composite, so he's a highly rated guy. But the thing that stands out to me is like he's just a bully, strong offensive lineman, 6'4", 320. He effectively gets to the second level and blocks defenders in the run game. To me, he probably projects more as like an interior type of offensive lineman at the college level. But I think he's totally, we talk about like Mario Cristobal, Alex Mirabal have types that they like, and he certainly is that type, just aggressive, physical, gonna bury the defender and make him feel it. So I think he's a big time offensive lineman for this class. Jalen Jones been committed to Miami a while, another four-star guy. But the thing that stands out about him, instincts, instincts, instincts. He's also a willing hitter. Honestly, like, and I think I've told you this, like watching him a little bit at camps and stuff. There's just a lot of similarities to me to Cam Kitchens. Will he
Hmm.
be Cam Kitchens? That's to be seen. But very similar playing style, the way they play the game. So I think he's a nice fit at safety. Demarcus DeRoche, big time athlete, can't teach his length and movement skills. To me, another thing to think about too, like as it relates to like a DeRoche and a Javon Dawson type. With the 105, like these are guys that you just kind of like stash, like
Yeah.
you bring those guys in, see what you got in 3 years because the length, the athleticism can't be taught. Sherrod Gordine, to me, it's between him and, in my opinion, like Josh Johnson as like the most underrated commits in this class. And I'm not saying they're not properly ranked. I understand why they're ranked where they're ranked. But like to me, I think they can be good college players. Sherrod Gordine, total dog, feisty, aggressive, playmaker, corner. He's undersized, which is why he's a three-star. But, I think the easy comparison there from like a Miami perspective is like a Trajan Bandy, just vibes like that. And to me, he can be like that perfect kind of that nickel coverage type of corner that can also bring some physicality relative to being undersized. And then, Josh Johnson, we touched on him. He's the defensive lineman from Key West. Man, I love his frame. Really love his closing speed at his size. He accelerates through a ball carrier, closes down the space fast. To me, like we'll see how he looks his senior year. I think a big reason why he's rated where he's rated is because he missed so many games as a junior.
Mhm.
He only played in like 4 games last season. But to me, he's a big time athlete at his size. To me, he's like a 4-star type of guy. So we'll see if it progresses to that point during his senior tape evaluation. But man, I could see him being a very, very, very productive defensive lineman at the college level. And then Tyler Ford, again, we talk about Mario Cristobal, Alex Mirabal having types, massive, aggressive, plays angry, needs to clean up a lot of technique. But in a couple years, I could see him being, a guy in the rotation or maybe even pushing for a starting role at Miami. So those are kind of the, you know, lower rated guys wanted to touch on. And I don't know if there's anyone that jumps out to you, Gabby, that you want also like who of this group maybe you like the most for whatever reason.
Yeah, I think both of those MacArthur DBs, Jalen Jones and Sherrard Gordine. I mean, I think these are both South Florida kids that are
Hmm.
wired the right way, right? Again, you got to want to be a part of this. And, in South Florida, there's been a lot of kids that have just decided to leave, which is totally fine. But I think Jalen Jones and Sherrard Gordine are wired in a way that I think they're going to translate well to Coral Gables. Jalen Jones and the Cam Kitchens thing, I think, is a really good, again, Miami type of comp. He's a willing hitter more so than I think people realize. There's a little clip that surfaced this week of his
Hmm.
practice of him kind of just like timing it up and just blowing up a ball carrier in the backfield. Like he wants to play it, he wants to hit. He's very instinctual, which shows you see in the 7-on-7. And the way he even covers, like I think he can actually like kind of line up against someone and cover them man to man. So he has some of those coverage abilities too. And then Gordine to me is just like that South Florida chip on your shoulder
Hmm.
dog type of guy, which again, it can be maybe over emphasized maybe or overset or overstated, but I think Sherrard Gordine it actually kind of fits as far as just him being just like that chip on your shoulder. I'm gonna just play really hard and let you know about it type. So both those guys definitely stand out to me. Tyler Ford, David, I think just the feedback and what I get on Tyler Ford, definitely a lot to clean up, but they love that he's just a nasty finisher
Yeah.
and they feel like they run this duo vertical run game
Yep.
and they feel like he's like the way his play style fits in very well with what they want to do in the vertical running game and they feel like he's powerful, he's strong, he's nasty, he plays that way and they think that everything else can be worked on and developed, but they think for the way they want to pound the rock,
Yep.
Tyler Ford is a great fit for that right now. So I see the vision with Tyler Ford. And like Josh Johnson, I think he's another one. He's just big. Like you're gonna like 6'5", 270s, all of that. So you get him in for a spring and he's gonna be someone that's gonna end up playing at 290, with that athleticism on the interior and just push people around. And he also plays at Key West, which is not a typical
Yeah.
breeding ground for major college
He'll
athletes.
develop a
So
lot in college. He
yeah,
will.
there's a lot more to tap into with Josh Johnson, which I think Miami really is excited about, and that's why it was a priority for them to take him when they did. And look again, mid 3-star prospect, but there were a lot of big brands that were
Yeah.
after him. This ended up being a
He's
Miami
got four
Florida
star
battle.
upside. He
Yeah, I mean
does.
Wisconsin. I mean some of these Big Ten schools like Iowa and Wisconsin were trying to get up there. Like you got
He's
to
a
be a big,
total
strong kid.
he's a total Iowa or Wisconsin like
Hmm.
third round pick. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like that's who he is. He's gonna be good, assuming he stays healthy and all that. He's
right.
gonna be good in college. I
Yeah,
like how this class is constructed.
definitely.
Like even the lower rated guys, there's intriguing traits, whether it's the length or the size or the speed or some of that nastiness that some of these guys have. I can see how it's all fitting together in this class. There's what, 13 commits if I have it right?
Yep. Yep.
7 guys if I count right from the state of Florida. 6 of those guys from South Florida, if you're including Key West, which I would include Key West. We typically don't put Monroe County in the, SoFla, but I
Hey,
would.
he's got the 305 area code, so I think
Yeah.
it checks out.
Yep. So I like the way, and look, I mentioned it earlier, but like allocation of resources via position groups. You want to allocate your resources in my opinion, at quarterback, that's a check, Israel Abrams. Offensive line, Sean Tatum and Tyler Ford, I think have potential to be future starters down the road. Defensive line, look, I think there's still work to be done there. Miami's working hard to maybe try and flip some guys. But like in terms of project types, and long-term potential, Miami's got three guys there that I think are intriguing long term. And we talked about corner, man. Love, love, love what they're doing with, to me, their corner class is done. Dante Wright, Hall, and Gordine, call it a class. Keep those guys happy. And, that talent stacking on some of the recent classes, they're going to be set at corner. Those are the four position groups that allow you to compete for championships. Let's get out of here on two more talking points, Gabby. Main targets to know going forward, as you're honing in on like guys you're monitoring, watching here during, summer official visit season, etc. We've talked about AJ Randall. Who else would you highlight in this regard?
Yeah, definitely. A few. Let's start at the top with DJ Jacobs, right? The five-star edge rusher out of Georgia, the Ohio State commit. He's been on Miami's radar from the beginning of this 2027 recruiting process. And Miami's not kind of taking their foot off the gas in this recruitment. I think if anything, they're just kind of pressing it hard. We've already seen them flip and someone from Georgia. We've seen them flip someone from Oregon, and they're certainly trying to flip DJ Jacobs from Ohio State. So he's still someone I'm very much tracking. I think the same could be said about Jaden Bryant. Can you take both those guys? Maybe not. I'm not sure. Maybe they can, but I think the plan right now is to find a way to acquire one of DJ Jacobs or Jaden Bryant, who's committed to LSU. Both those guys are five-star pass rushers, and we talk about those premium positions, David. And I think in this class specifically, I
Yeah.
think D end is one of those positions that they need to hit on a difference maker, like prototypical type
And
of
with size.
guy. Right, with size. So like a DJ Jacobs who's 6'5", 235, or Jaden Bryant who's pushing 6'4" at 245, who's that stockier type of edge, but still has some length and
Hmm.
definitely a motor. One of those guys I think needs to find their way into this class. And I know it's a priority with Miami taking a smaller class, right? We haven't really talked about that. Like the
Yeah.
the intention is to take a smaller class this cycle. I mean, it could be as little as 20 prospects. I think that that's very much on the table. So Miami wants to make sure that there is high quality players in this class.
Do you agree with that approach?
Yeah, well, I think it's just I think
I
whether
do.
agree or disagree, like I think from what I've gathered, it's just what they have to do because that's the way the roster is structured. They took 30 guys last cycle. You can't do that every year with the guys that they also want to retain. They've done a really good job of retaining guys. So I think
Right.
when you're just balancing this roster, like that's just what this class calls for. So I think it's just kind of it is what it is. So I agree with it if you're going to take 20 quality guys.
Right.
So I think that's the intent to take about that. And look, they might take some from what I understand, and I think it's important for fans to get this too. Like they might take some guys this cycle that maybe aren't particularly NIL guys, right? Like some of those developmental upside guys that they feel like they want
Yeah.
to just kind of bring into the program that don't really count against like, maybe the budget or whatever it is. Guys that are coming on scholarship essentially that want to be a part of this, that they're willing to develop. So I think 20 guys that they're willing to invest in and pour into are important. They need to find a receiver opposite of Nick Lanier, right? They have the number 3 wide receiver committed in the local Dade County prospect. They have a couple guys that they're chasing. The buzzy one this week was Eli Woodard out of Southern California. He was committed to USC. He decommitted, and Miami was quickly, kind of partnered with Eli Woodard. I think that's very possible that Miami ends up taking someone like Eli Woodward or that situation works out. But, there are other programs in the mix too. Miami's also working on Quentin Hale, the USC wide receiver commit, who's a top 50 player nationally, 6'3", 192 pounds. I know USC is working really hard to shut down that recruitment. And to this point, I don't think there's been a formal announcement that his recruitment is shut down to any point. So I know Miami's definitely pushing the Trojans for another one of their wide receiver commits. And then, offensive line again is always a priority. You got Jatori Williams, who was going to commit and then kind of backed out and wants to go through the process, which was his original plan. And so Jatori Williams, I think, is another big name to kind of know. And then, we've hinted that Miami is going to potentially get good news, likely going to get good news on Thursday afternoon with AJ Randall and Caden Henderson is still a name that comes up pretty often with linebacker. There are definitely a couple others that the Hurricanes are still working on at linebacker. Guys like Noah Glover out of Virginia, guys like Jalathan Mayfield out of North Carolina, Drew Williams out of Georgia. They just offered a new linebacker target that kind of came up on my radar. They offered on Thursday, but I wrote about him on Wednesday. Darian Tomlin out of Kentucky. So Miami wants to put together a good, strong linebacker class, and there are plenty of other names to know there. So we're on it as always, and there's a ton of stuff on the site too that you can read and consume there. That kind of just dives deeper into Miami's efforts this cycle.
Yeah. Appreciate everyone for listening. Again, go support us with getting a VIP subscription. Summer recruiting season is fun to follow, and it goes right into fall camp in August. So now's as good of a time as any to jump on the bandwagon and enjoy Miami Hurricanes football and recruiting coverage. Appreciate everyone for listening. Sorry for my way too lengthy rant at the top of the show. And until next time, take care.